Hello, I am Scott Herbst. I am founder of Six Flex Training and Consulting, and you are watching or listening to The Flex. This is a show where we have conversations with people who are expressing leadership with the intention that it open up access to you expressing yours. Today, I'm really excited to have on the show an old friend of mine, Adam Malaty-Uhr. He is the transformative facilitator of his own company. And what he helps companies with is to really work with their learning and development departments to accelerate their leadership development efforts, accelerate organizational change, and to do so through a transformative lens by using transformative facilitation. I'm excited to have him here today because he's shared some tools with me, someone who incorporates transformational approach into my own coaching and leadership development efforts. And he's just shared some things with me that have really contributed to my facilitation. So I wanted to have him on the guest so you could hear it directly from him. And as usual, I like to do less by way of introduction and have you really hear our guest story from our guests. So that said, I'm gonna welcome Adam. Thanks for being
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, it's great to be here. It's been a while. We've known each other for a few years, lost connection, and so glad we were able to reconnect over the past few months. It's great to talk to you.
Yes, I'm excited you're here. And so Adam, go back as far as you would like. I always tell my guests, but what I'm particularly interested in is, what was your pathway, what you see as the important points in your own growth and development that led you to where you are, and we can let the conversation unfold from there.
So that, of course, for I think anybody you talk to, that's a dynamic question. High points, spent over 20 years in the United States military, serving as an infantry officer in the Army National Guard. A lot of leader development there, a lot of being able to see what leadership development can look like, the benefits and the drawbacks. But for me, I think the strongest story that I can share with you actually is I call it my origin story. So going back to my childhood, I had what I would describe as a pretty good relationship with my father, going through adolescence, trying to get to know him, but also struggling with, kind of standing up for myself and finding my own direction, feeling like, I have all the time in the world, I'll eventually get to know him in a really profound way. And I'm sure he probably felt similarly. I had that dream of building that stronger relationship, but my father was in a company that did not care too much about holistic leader development, about helping people in their organization be the best person they can and also meet the mission. For the organization he was in, it was about the mission, it was about the work, and wasn't necessarily about how can we support the development and the lives of the people that serve the organization. I remember him coming home, he'd walk through the door, I'd give him a big hug, I just latch on, and even though I could tell he was excited to see me, I could also see in his eyes how exhausted he was. And he'd find his way to his chair and he'd sit down and he would require so much time to just rest and recover that there were countless nights, weekends that I felt like there was more that he could have offered in our relationship. And not to say that that's his fault, but I'd say it's the circumstance.
Yeah.
Now, like I mentioned, we thought we had all the time in the world. Unfortunately, when I was just 15 years old, he got sick with a disease called Lewy body disorder. It manifests in a number of different ways, but in essence, to break it down, it's a combination of dementia-like symptoms and Parkinson's-like symptoms.
Okay.
So even though my father died at 19, I lost him at 15.
Yeah.
So the reason I share this story is I'm on this journey right now to help as many L&D leaders understand what are the ways that they can maximize the transformation of their supervisors, their managers, and their executives to the point where they can create a holistically, beautifully developmental workspace and workplace while also serving the organization. How can you do both at the same time? And we talk a lot about leadership behaviors and what is the right thing to do in this circumstance or that circumstance. But as we know, every situation is different and might call in different things. So how can we help those people that we serve, the leaders in our organization, to think more complexly about their situation, think more complexly about themselves, to move past their own inner demons, their own inner mindsets and monologues to actually reach a higher and greater level, not just for themselves, not just for their position, not just for the organization, but the people who are being left behind, the people who are really serving the organization on an everyday basis.
Ken, I love that. And I love that approach. And it's very, it's part of the reason I had you here to talk about it, because I think we're very like-minded and
I'd agree.
kindred spirits in that regard. Um, I know, however, there's some skepticism out there like, well,
Hmm.
hey, my business is my business. And there's a number, and maybe even a lot of people who would say, if you want to develop yourself, like, go ahead and do that. But I've got a business to run. So
Hmm.
I'm interested to hear, could you make a business case for this approach?
It's a great question. If you think about any, like whether it's, I think organizational change is an easy one to think about. So you realize that there's so many shifts that you need to make to your organization to refine it, to get it flowing in a way that maximizes the outcome, maximizes the productivity. Now, if you're thinking about, okay, how do I lead this in a way that gets everybody rowing in the same direction as quickly as possible? There are so many undercurrents that are going on in those moments that you want those who are leading that organizational change to be able to see those little nuanced moments and movements of the organization, of the culture, to be able to not just see it, but then to be very deliberate in the interventions they're making. Now, if you expect that of your people to lead that organizational change in a really, really decisive way like that, you need to grow them. It's that simple. If we take a whole step back, oftentimes we'll try to do a major organizational change, thinking that'll bring about increase in efficiency, when in actuality isn't necessarily a structural problem, but a cultural problem that is undergirding the entire organization. And if you develop your leaders, you can save months of trying to make a structural change that doesn't actually address the underlying culture. So helping your people transform and grow to be able to see the nuance of the social dynamics, the things that are being spoken about in back rooms but aren't making their way to those big table conversations. It's about growing them. It's about helping them be able to see that and to move past their own inner obstacles to be able to tackle what the business needs to tackle in the moment it needs to tackle it.
Yeah, I want to see if I can make this concrete for people and also check
Yeah,
my
absolutely.
understanding.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about a cultural problem underlying a structural problem,
Hmm.
an example for me that immediately comes to mind is one of my first consulting jobs. I was really naive and I would say really arrogant. And
Gotcha.
um, yeah, I'm meeting with this company and I'm like, oh my God, sharing like what they're seeing. And I'm a behavior analyst and I know all about motivation and incentive systems. And
Hmm.
if we just put in an assessment that connected it all, like that would solve your problems. And after about probably 8 months, I worked with them for about a year. And after about 8 months, I realized this is never going to work because there is this underlying culture of um, a practice, even, but like it was so widespread and taken for granted that I would call it the culture that like leadership would make promises, they wouldn't
Hmm.
follow through on them. they wouldn't say on anything. And so there was just this expectation in the environment that, well, nothing's going to make any difference.
Yeah.
And so like anything I tried to put in place was met with that cultural expectation. And after about 8 months, I was like, what do I do? Because I've put 8 months and I really want them to succeed.
Hmm.
And I don't think it's ever gonna, and I don't want to just quit. I was actually, this was like relieved when they said, you know what, we're gonna stop this work. And I was like,
Yeah.
thank God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Scott, I love that. So, like, if we think about culture, like at its basis, you can see culture in the everyday behaviors that are going on. I love how you mentioned like they're over promising or they're saying one thing and they're not following through, right? Those are just straightforward behaviors that can be seen.
Yeah.
To tie it back to like transform facilitation, how do we actually help those people grow? You
Yeah.
think,
Awesome. Great.
you sit down, you talk to them, you're like, okay, if you're going to say something, if you're going to make a promise, do it. Great. They could have probably told themselves that. They probably have told themselves that, right?
Yeah.
The
Like this
question
time's gonna be
is
different. This time I'm gonna follow through.
exactly. So if
Yep.
we're looking at the behaviors, the question I have is what's undergirding those behaviors?
Yeah.
What are the fears and then what are the assumptions that
Mm,
we can actually help people in an organization at scale better understand what is the thing that's keeping them and holding them to these unproductive behaviors? If they're over promising, my guess is they have really great intention, but it's somewhere in there, whether it's the need to promise, the need to look like the person who's really wants to help, and that's the most important thing. And if they don't, there's something that they're risking. Or it
yeah.
could go even a level deeper to where they really want to do it, but they realize that if they take that extra step forward, that they're putting themselves at risk because they're bringing to surface, maybe they're floating an idea in the organization that is in some way taboo. Like we need to do this, and I'm going to make something up, so I'm not saying that this is your situation, right? But
Yeah.
if we step forward and we put in this incentive system, for example, it might be going against one of the senior leaders who is against it. And if we speak out against, or if we promote this, we're in some way doing a disservice to that person or that relationship that is causing us to make a promise that we want to do it, but when push comes to shove, we start wanting to move forward, we just end up pushing down on that gas or on the brake pedal, and we completely stop moving forward. So, I mean, it's a beautiful thing to promise something, to know that it's best. But there's another thing that's undergirding there. Even below culture is what is that internal belief system? So, transform facilitation is about what are those behaviors we want to engage in? Okay, great. What is that underlying belief system that each individual in the room, and it's going to be different for everyone, that we can give them an experience to float that a little bit to the surface in a safe and productive way to give them a chance to wrestle with it. Because I'm not a brain surgeon, Scott. And I don't think you are. I know you pretty well by now. It's like you're not either. We can't just cut somebody's brain open and just connect some neurons. Like, okay, here's the overpromise and here's the deliver. Let's just connect these two, sew them up, problem solved. Like, we can't do that. But we can give people a chance to wrestle with that and to struggle to the point where they're actually realizing what's getting in their way so they can actually engage in the behavior that they already know is the right one to move forward with.
Yeah. Awesome. I want to underline a couple things that I heard. One of my
Yeah.
commitments in this podcast is that people walk away with something useful, and whether they're, you know, chief executive or chief whatever in an
Hmm.
organization, or just really like elevated to managing their first team, that there's something they can learn. And
Yeah.
um, what I'm gonna suggest based on what you said, correct me, is
Hmm.
that anytime that you see a repetitive pattern in
Hmm.
an organization or a team that's not working, it's not delivering what you want, right? That there's an opportunity there to step back and maybe even assume, you didn't say this, but assume there's something, uh
Hmm.
some kind of limiting belief that maybe I'm not even aware of, right? that I wouldn't even like something I believe so deeply that I don't even see it as a belief, right?
Mm-hmm. It's just
Um,
reality to you.
yeah. And but to examine, well, how am I really looking at this? And what are my implicit beliefs? Um, and from there, if you were having someone do this, and so that's like a useful place to start. Am I right?
I'd say absolutely. I'd say being curious about what is the thing you're doing repeatedly. And
Yeah.
every one of us, I love how you said that, every one of us has these beliefs that it's the water we swim in. It's our world. It's how we see ourselves, how we see the world around us. And sometimes you wonder, why is someone doing that behavior? You're like, that'll never work. And then it ends up in some way working out. You're like, well, that's crazy to me. That didn't look like it was going to work. Or
Hmm.
for yourself, like you put in like New Year's coming up. We got a couple months away, right? You put in that plan. You're like, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to work out more. I'm going to do whatever it is. And just as much as you start working towards it, like it's not hard. You go to the gym, get on the treadmill, right? Pick up some weights and do some lifts, right? Going to the gym isn't that difficult. But so many of us, and sometimes myself too, sometimes we struggle with doing and engaging in that behavior change. Well, what gives? It's about those ways, those beliefs that we have for ourselves and for the world around us. So if we can start working on those, we can start shifting those behaviors in the ways that we truly want to for ourselves, beyond those fears or beliefs or assumptions that are holding us back. So, you know what? Here's a question for you, or a
Yeah.
question really for the audience: is if you're finding yourself you're in that challenge, that kind of, you keep trying to change this behavior, but you just can't make it happen for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Chances are you probably know someone who's really good at it. I would recommend you actually go, and if you trust them and you feel comfortable that they'll give you a really honest answer, pull them aside, just have a one-on-one conversation and ask this. Ask them, how do you think about that behavior? Like maybe it's working out. How do you think about working out?
Yeah.
What about that is important to you? Because then what you're to hear is you're to hear their belief system around it. Don't ask
Hmm.
like, so what time do you go? What kind of lifts? They'll have tons of information and you can have that conversation too. But ask them just a simple question. How do you think about that behavior? And you're going to get a deluge of assumptions, beliefs, maybe even some fears might come up too for them that holds them to those behaviors. And those beliefs are something that you might choose to actually internalize or play with, or just try on for a little while to see if it works for you.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm thinking about areas in my life where I would go talk to people. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. It just in my business, I would talk about probably growth and partnership.
Hmm.
Like for me, like business is fine, and there is this nagging, like, well, why am I not bigger, right? Um,
Mm.
like there's that. I'm thinking about, um, I got married fairly recently in life. I've
Hmm.
been with my wife for over 5 years now, going on six. And
Nice. Congrats, by the way.
thanks. And there were like leading up to that, towards your point, there were I had conversations with married people
Hmm.
about and conversations with people whose marriages I admired,
I love
right?
that.
Very much in line with what you're talking
I
about.
love that.
Like,
Yeah.
um, like how do you do it? Like how do you have this work? What is your secret to a great marriage, right?
Hmm.
Um, very cool.
Yeah. No,
Um,
you know what? I love that question because that gets at like, what is the behaviors that we as a couple should be engaging in. And I'll blast that out to be like, you can ask that about any successful relationship. And that could be subordinate and boss, that could be co-executives, that could be two directors who have to work together on a regular basis. What makes your relationship so successful? Behaviors. How do you think about those behaviors? Oh, I know that if, and this is like I know if we don't work out our argument that night, I'm going to go to sleep angry. I'm going to start getting resentful. and I don't want to be resentful for a minute in my romantic relationship, we'll say in my marriage. But yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, you've already given me some stuff to think about. Then,
Yeah.
so in addition to talking with people and
Hmm.
finding people who seem to have uh the breakthrough you would want, even if for them it's not
Hmm.
a breakthrough, like find out, well, how do you look at the situation? Is there something else you can offer to our listeners in terms of where do I go from here? And how does that help me? How do those conversations help me distinguish or bring some awareness to recognize my own limiting beliefs or implicit beliefs?
Yeah. So first, I'd say obviously having someone who's familiar with transformative practices, whether it's a coach or a facilitator,
Yeah.
can be really helpful. And hopefully, you have someone like that in your organization. If you don't, that's okay. I'm going to give you a quote from one of my favorite developmental practitioners. She is a tenured professor at Columbia University. Her name's Ellie Drago-Severson, Harvard doctorate. She's amazing. And she says, listening, just listening. You don't have to feel like you have to say anything. Listening by itself is a developmental support. So having someone you feel comfortable to just share what's going on in your head with another person by itself can be transformative. They don't need to know anything. All they need to do is just sit there and just be quiet and listen. Yeah, sure,
Yes.
there's active strategies, there's coaching. Sorry to interrupt. You can do those things too. You can learn those things, but just having someone to talk to that you feel comfortable sharing all that stuff with, all that baggage, all that stuff that kind of feels like I don't feel comfortable saying this, but if you have someone who you're comfortable testing the waters with, things like that, massive, massive help.
Yeah. I totally concur. Have have evidence that that makes a difference. Um,
Mhm.
how do you how do you find a good listener?
Okay. How do you find a good listener? Okay, I'm thinking like five different things. So
Yeah, go
maybe
ahead, man.
like
It's a conversation, so go for
a
it.
few items here. So one is you might have someone in your life already who can be a great listener, but isn't because they think that they have to speak.
Yes.
So I would say, like right off the bat, if there's someone whom you trust, just going to them and saying, hey, I just need to just talk something out. And the best thing you could do right now is just listen. Like, I don't expect anything from you. I don't want a solution. And I would bet that most of the people listening to this right now might identify themselves as a fixer. Give me a problem, I'll work with it, I'll play with it, and I'll give you a solution. Love it. I've been addicted to that. Scott, I'm going to guess that you, like based on your earlier story, right? Like going to the organization, let's solve it, let's fix it.
Oh yeah, I love solving problems.
Right?
Yeah.
We feel great doing it. It's like, check, okay, what's the next thing? You feel productive, you feel great. At the same time, if you keep solving someone's problems for them, let's say that they haven't heard this, and let's say you're just addicted to like getting that help from, say, your boss, or you have a subordinate who keeps asking for help, and you give them the answer, and then they walk away, they feel good because they have an answer, you feel good because you helped them. That's great, but what about the day you're sick? What about the day you're not there? It's better in a lot of time, not every time, because sometimes you need a quick solution to something. I don't want to degrade or take away from the importance of giving an answer, giving a perspective. That's important. I gave that advice earlier. But if you're looking for long-standing transformation, just ask someone. Just say, hey, you really might want to fix this. I know you've dealt with something similar. I just need to talk it out. That's it. And chances are they might say yes. Now, they might have to bite their tongue. It might be painful in a way for them to sit back and just listen. The second is just to remember, like, having a best friend at work. There's a lot of research behind this. It's great for resiliency, great for well-being. Relationships aren't built overnight. They're built through regular investment. And the more you invest in a relationship, the more you're going to get to the point where you can start feeling comfortable. And don't give them everything up front. Maybe it doesn't feel safe. Maybe that feels awkward, and maybe it might not be safe for whatever reason. But give a little bit to give them a chance to demonstrate that you can trust them and build that over time. And before long, if you keep investing and they invest too, you'll have great, what we call talking partner, someone that you can actually talk these things out with.
Awesome. I love your first point. It reminds me, I was a professor in a different life,
Yeah.
um, and in my very first year as a professor, I got imposter syndrome big time.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm teaching a graduate class, and my first time teaching it, and I'm like a month ago, I was one of you guys, Um, and so I put a lot of pressure on myself to really have the right answer. And
Mhm.
I was in class one day and someone was asking a question, and I didn't know how to say what I knew in a different way. And I started,
Been
I
there.
would say it's maybe like the one time I think I was close to a panic attack. I don't really but it was like my vision started getting narrow, and I couldn't, like, she kept, what do you mean? And I would just say the same thing again. And I did that a
Mm,
couple times and I was like, I need a break. Right. Um,
yeah.
and I promise this connects to your point. What I did was
Mhm.
at the break, I had a teaching assistant. I was really lucky.
Mhm.
And I pulled her out into the hallway and I said, here's what I need from you. Like, I'm just gonna vent, and I just
Mhm.
need you to like sit there and let me share it. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong about what I'm going to say. It's all fine. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to change it. Yeah, like, I don't need
Mhm.
your advice. Just like listen to me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, okay, a little, like, she looked a little afraid, honestly. Like the professor, like, what's going on, right?
Yeah.
But she was great. And I said, like, look, I don't know how to say this differently, and I'm concerned that everyone's going to think I'm a fraud and that I don't belong here, and they're going to go tell the department chair that, what did you hire this guy for, and take his contract away. And this is not what I came here for. I didn't come here to like prove to everyone how
Mhm.
smart I am. I came here to learn. And like, now I'm like, and she was just like, okay, okay, okay. Um, and I said, that's it. And she said, okay, well, you don't. And I said, stop. Don't solve my problem. Like, you're doing great just getting
Mhm.
it. And that, I really appreciate what you're saying, because that gave me the space to go back in after the break and say, like, look, I, you know what? I don't know how to say this another way. I don't understand this well enough to say it another way, but I'm gonna think about it.
Mm.
I'll get back to you next week. And it was like this huge relief. But it was
Yeah.
just to your point, like, there's people in your environment who can listen if you just tell them really what you need.
Scott, I love that so much because like that moment, whether they're in front of participants or whether they are in front of a board or whether they are just leading a team in a meeting, that happens, I would imagine, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of times a day to people. And we might not have that break in the class to go talk to somebody real quick, but such a powerful moment that I hope people not just hear, but realize that in that moment, whether it's like that heightened emotional state like you described so beautifully, that they're like, okay, I just need to vocalize the fear that's going on for me, to just get it out of my head, out of my system, and to be able to move forward. It's awesome.
Awesome. Um, hey, I want to pay a little bit attention to the time we have, and
Yeah,
I had you on. I really appreciate
of
what
course.
a transformational approach offers for personal development and a leader looking at
Hmm.
themselves, right?
Yeah.
But one thing I found value in some of the materials that you shared with me is
Hmm.
what it offers to interacting with, I mean, for me, like a group I'm facilitating, but I also see
Hmm.
value for interacting with a team and facilitating team meetings and creating teamwork and partnership.
Yeah, both are
And
great.
I'd love for you to share one or two quick insights about um, something practical people could take to their team meetings to have teams step up and take ownership for results.
Okay, so I'm gonna kind of segue my way into there because I think like we're talking first about like facilitating some kind of group session, whether that's like facilitating team dynamic conversation or whether you're in front of like 100 people, right?
Yep.
Is there's a difference between facilitating and instructing. And I
Yep.
bet just saying those words, you're already thinking about a bunch of different things that in the ways that can be different, right?
Awesome.
Instructing, you're in front of the room, you're delivering information, you're saying, this is how it's done, this is what it looks like, these are all the different ways that it could come into practice.
Yep.
Instructing, me to you.
Yep.
Facilitation is us.
Yep.
True facilitation, I'd say transformative facilitation is definitely included in this. You, you might be the person in the position of formal authority who
Hmm.
is facilitating the conversation. But it's not about you transmitting information. Sure, you might have a moment where you might slip an instruction. Here is that thing we're learning today, or here is the way we're going to move forward in this organizational change to address team meetings, right? Sure, there's
Yep.
going to be moments like that. There's going to be moments where you need to convey information. But to be mindful that that's not the only way you need to be. You can slip out of that and slip into just facilitating, which to frame it differently, it's a we as opposed to you and a me. It's a we. How can we collectively move forward in terms of like a leader development workshop? How can we, you as individuals and us collectively, think more complexly about motivation in the workplace? We talked about that earlier. Or how can we think more complexly about giving really great feedback to support one of our subordinates as they're growing up?
Yep.
There's so much knowledge in a room, especially when you're with a group of folks who've been in their careers for a few years to 20 years. There's so much knowledge in that space that if you just try to instruct, they're going to tune out. If you try to lead a team meeting where you have experienced people in there and you're just like, okay, here's the new organizational chart. Here's how we're doing. Of course, a lot of times that information needs to be repeated sometimes, but here's exactly how we're going to go about this step by step by step by step.
Yep.
Sometimes that's important, but the question is oftentimes with a dynamic or a flatter organization, the question is, how are we to tackle this challenging problem? How can we take this challenge and where are the things that I, as a leader, I'm going to miss things? Everyone listening to this, I'm going to imagine, is a human being with faults and flaws and with incompleteness, with blind spots. You're to see someone else going to see something else that might be more important in that moment. How do you facilitate a conversation that can allow those things to float to the surface? And the first thing is saying, and Scott, like you did in that class, I don't have all the answers. I'm a human, just like you guys. And while I know quite a bit at this moment, I just want to have a really good dialogue with the group to figure out what might be a best way forward. And sometimes you might have to use your authority and say, okay, I appreciate all that information. I'm going to make the decision. We're going to focus on this first. And sometimes that needs to happen. Absolutely. But how can you get the best of the group that you're working with to not just make the best decisions, but when people have a chance to voice their perspective, their opinion, chances are they're going to work harder for whatever that is because they've had a chance to say their piece.
Awesome. Awesome. So it's about one thing that our listeners can take away is that assume the people on your team have some expertise, they
Mm-hmm.
have some wisdom to offer, and part of your job, if you're facilitating versus just command and instruct,
Yeah.
is
And
to
this is from an Army officer, by the way. Like command and control, sometimes sure. But if that's your default, and you're missing something. Like there's something you're leaving on the table.
yep. I got one more question before we
Yeah.
start wrapping things up, but that's a really great point. That I can hear in your story that and correct me, but that
Mhm.
you probably had to learn and develop yourself in the direction you are now, and
Yes, yes, yes,
transform some
yes.
habits of like, how do you lead, how do you uh and can you offer anything about your journey, and the transformation you underwent, um
Yeah.
to our listeners?
Yeah. So I'm gonna step back into 2018. So this is, relatively recent.
Yep.
And I love how you mentioned motivation. Motivation is one of my favorite topics as well. I've done workshops for a decade now, actually, on how do you increase and improve internal motivation in a workplace. Here I am. I'm at a national train center in rotation for the military. This is like all eyes of the Army. They're on you to see how well you perform. I was second in command of a unit, about 400 people engaging in this work. My pressure was up here. It was high, and it was simulated combat, like, as well, for a month. And I found myself slipping into the weeds of micromanagement multiple times because there were things that weren't happening the way I thought they should happen. And it took a couple conversations for me, not just with my boss, but also with the people whom I was micromanaging because they were used to me not doing that because I
Hmm.
wasn't typically under that kind of pressure. And I can think of one time with this. I love this sergeant so much; he's the best. But I snapped. I never snapped. I actually snapped at him, and I was like, "No, this is wrong." I hit a point where I was like, "I've overstepped," and I asked him to step outside. And I did kind of what you did with your teaching assistant in a way. I just said, I'm sorry, you didn't deserve that. You guys haven't deserved the leader that I've been. And, you don't think about like soldiers like crying. We wept a little bit and hugged each other. We got teary eyed.
Yeah.
And we just realized that like I was actually doing it not just a disservice to him and the people he was leading, to myself, the whole organization as well. So that was one of those moments where I had to realize in a moment where like I teach this stuff, but going back to it, you can tell somebody a behavior and they can say, yeah, no, that's right. That's the behavior I need to do. And here's the time I'm going to do it. But when, the rubber meets the road, it's not always that easy. So you need those moments to step back and to question, to be curious. And the thing is we need it before we reach that breaking point, before we snap, before we say something that we regret. In those moments where we're dealing with just like where the stress becomes just like a little bit of background noise, and you're like, well, I can turn that down just by like walking to the bathroom, grabbing a drink of water, maybe going for a quick run. I can turn it down, but it's still there. That stress, that anxiety, a lot of times that's an indicator for you to kind of take a step back and to reflect on how are you showing up and what are those underlying things that are going on that are causing you to make those steps that are actually doing you and the people around you a great disservice. So going back, Scott, one of your early questions is like make the business case for this. You can yell, you can be demanding, you're going to get some results, but over time people aren't going to work hard to do a great job and to be a great team member. They're going to work hard. They're going to work good enough to not be yelled at, to not be demeaned or disciplined. And that's why this stuff's so important. It shouldn't just be about getting the product done, but it should be about helping people be the best person they can be in the role that they're in to get that thing, whatever that mission of the organization is, to the best level possible. And oh, by the way, if you do that right, people are going to go home and they're going to love their life even more. And they're going to sing the praises of your organization and help bring the best people in. And that's the beautiful part about transform facilitation.
Yeah. I love it. I'm glad you circled back to the business case, and just
Yeah.
hearing what you share is that, like you said, micromanaging is a way to get results. And
Hmm.
I would almost guarantee that if you didn't have that realization and then have that conversation to clean it up, right?
Yes. Yes.
Um, where like you actually fully own, hey, this is, and fully, this is who I've been. I've been
It was
micromanaged.
not easy.
Like draw a line in the sand and say, like, no more. I apologize. This doesn't work. Um, you are going to see a change to me.
Hmm.
Probably gives him an opportunity and your team, because I guarantee you word's going to get out about that, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
couldn't believe what, like,
Oh,
no,
and it
like,
was public too. I did it from a lot of
oh
people.
yeah, oh
Like,
awesome.
yeah,
um but
it
it
was
so it gives
a
you an opportunity.
colossally negative moment in my life, but I ended up turning to
No, but that's
positive.
awesome because it gives
Yeah.
people an opportunity right now to see, oh, like, oh, he gets it
Hmm.
and he's addressing it and he's working on it. And all right, cool. Like, and now to step forward and say, all right, this is a leader I can get behind. Because
Yep.
before that, what I can see is that sure, there might be some results, but I'll bet they're like in a group of 400 people,
There's the
somewhere someone's
cost.
going to be like, I can't wait to stick it to this guy.
Oh
And
yeah. Oh yeah.
um or like they're going to see him and, well, you know what, this guy likes to micromanage, he didn't tell me to do that, so I guess this is his problem,
That's a beautiful example. Yep.
right? um so it's going to impact uh one, how long people stick around, but also the quality of the work that they do.
Agreed.
um
Agreed.
awesome, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Hey, we
There's one thing
yeah, go
I
ahead.
know we got to close it. There's one thing I want to go back to. It'll feel a little disjointed. So going back to like, there's ways to lead those experienced people, but also remember that your junior level folks, like those folks fresh out of maybe undergrad, like they have a perspective too that can be really valuable. And sometimes they're not working with all the pieces of the puzzle because they just haven't seen things enough. But remember that that person holds a lot of authority themselves and that they are the only person to be doing that job today.
Yeah,
So there's a perspective that they could be holding that could be for them, they might take it for granted because that's how things are or have always been for them. But being curious about their experience too, welcoming them into the conversation, the facilitation of the team meeting, because they're the ones who are going to be executing it as well. Getting a sense of what they're thinking too can be a really profound thing because you're going to hear their assumptions and how the work is done. And that could create a whole different opportunity, not just for their growth, but for the team to support them so that you can make even bigger gains in the long run. So I would just want to name that you're not just facilitating with larger groups of experienced people, but those newest people, like helping them, and also you're modeling those skills. So when they climb the ladder too, they can lead in those positive ways too.
yeah, brilliant, I love it. One thing I do, uh I'm just saying my spare time, but I'll supervise and train other behavior analysts.
Nice.
And as much as I can, one thing I've learned to do is to uh point out when they have good ideas, and
That's
to
awesome.
recognize for them. And what I've seen is that as I do that, people who kind of are quiet will start bringing more ideas forward.
Mm-hmm.
And in a training situation, that's really great because it gives me an opportunity to really know what they're thinking. And actually they contribute to me because they will have ideas where I'm like, okay, that idea is way better. um and then we'll start seeing it with their teams too, the people that they're supervising, because ultimately what I'm training them to do
Mm.
is to develop people under them, right? um I really appreciate that perspective. We are
Yeah.
so close to out of time.
Yeah.
Is
Can
there
I have one piece of
anything?
that?
Yeah, well, my here's my
Yeah,
next
yeah.
question. Is there anything you
Go
want to
ahead.
talk about that you didn't get to? This is your chance.
Yeah. So I want to carry a thought forward first, which is just the simple idea that if you're hearing this and you're like, you know what, I want to try this facilitation out a little bit, uh, first, great, love it. But also you need to set new expectations. I was just working with an L&D professional in New York a little while ago at a large firm, and she wanted to engage in this work. I'm like, great. And make sure you're setting those expectations. Make sure you're naming how this meeting is going to be different than previous meetings.
Yes.
And if you're interested in practicing these things, I have a God, I think it's up to 4 page, like simple breakdown of what are some great facilitative techniques you can leverage. And it's designed to be straightforward. It's designed for L&D professionals. But if you're a
Yeah.
leader and you're curious, how can I bring some of this in? A lot of those techniques you can use in any team meeting. It is honestly like this something I've used in my workshops, helping people become stronger facilitators. And that's like one of the things that they're like, I keep that on my desk next to me when I'm leading, because I'll get into a spot where I'm like, I'm not sure the move to make to carry the conversation to help get the best out of the people that I'm working with, or to help them transform in the right way. And boom, they go right to that. And that's transformativefacilitation.com. Again, transformativefacilitation.com.
That was my last question, is how can people reach you? So sounds like go to transformativefacilitation.com, download a free
Yes.
resource. I'm sure if they want to reach you, they can reach you through that as well.
Absolutely. You can also email me at Adam at, well, actually, let me give you, yeah, Adam at adammalaty-uhr.com, no hyphen. Adam at adammalaty-uhr.com. Uh, Pronounced Malager, but if you read it, it's spelled
Yeah.
Malaty-Uhr. So I'm sure that'll be in the title of that, and
Yes.
look forward to connecting.
Awesome. Adam, thanks so much for being here. I really,
Yeah, absolutely.
as
Thank you for
always,
inviting me.
enjoyed the conversation. Glad that we got the opportunity to record one of them and
Yeah,
share it with more people. Always a pleasure. Thank you for being here.
same. Thank you, Scott, and thank you, everybody.
Yeah, and all of you those listening, that completes this episode. We will see you, of course, press all the buttons, give us the likes, the 5-star reviews, and we will see you back here at the next episode of The Flex.